hole that the US dominated. Trump's tariffs and threats of annexation have been credited with helping Canada's Liberal Party to secure a fourth term. The BBC's Liz Doucette has the details.
The fact that they have secured a fourth term with a novice politician, Mark Carney, the central banker and economist turned politician, has led this country with his mantra of Canada Strong, presenting himself the man who can protect the country in a time of crisis. Most of all against the threats of President Trump, not just to level the tariffs, which are already having an impact here, but also the fact that President Trump keeps mentioning how Canada would be better off as the 51st state.
Recapping the top story this hour, security experts say a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by Boko Haram and its splinter rival ISWAP has raised fears of a major comeback by jihadists whose tactics now include armed drones and explosive devices planted on major roads. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulongwepe.
SABC News, the African perspective.
We are right here. We've arrived with our little mini bus, and all of you are going to fit in. Don't worry. All over the continent, you can all come in this little bus of ours. It's a little caravan. I think we should make it pink, this particular caravan of ours. We'll call it the On the Move caravan. And come in and let's hang out together. You know, we've got many stops to make in this particular On the Move journey. So, remember, you can also chat a little bit and have conversations with us on our different platforms as well. Remember, we're streaming live on multiple platforms, on Facebook, on X, and also we have our YouTube page and our Instagram. So go to those platforms. You'll see our live feed there. I'm actually mistaken. We're not on X with our live feed, but definitely we're on YouTube and Instagram. And don't forget that if you're like, Ben, I don't know how to get hold of you outside the internet, remember, you can still stream us live on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or the better way would actually to go to the SABC Plus app, and you can actually find Channel Africa there. Well, we've got many stops, so come in, get on this particular caravan, and let's see where we can take you. Well, we're going to be starting off with a very interesting conversation today. There's an opinion piece that's been published in News 24 where the head of the academics at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership for Girls questions why South African teacher programs barely address trauma. Wonder why that's something significant. We'll be speaking to Dumsani Shabala, who's going to chat to us a little bit about that. And they speak about the omissions of trauma education as being a systematic failure. So we'll find out from Dumsani just in a few minutes what's going on there. And then we've got our Becoming feature in the second hour. Becoming is something that is interesting. You know, in life, we all want to go through changes, or many of us actually don't want to go through changes. Rather, we resist change and would rather opt for staying the same. But change is good for us, right? It regulates us as good people, or either change actually creates momentum where you actually also find yourselves dealing with the bad habits. So on Becoming Today, we deal with such matters of character building. Across the continent, women have long been the pillars of strength. You know, so women of today like that.
I hate that so much. Like, I am nobody's rock. I am not a rock. I am just a human.
Well, Palesa is one of those contemporary women, but not everyone aligns to actually Palesa's view, because I know without the pillars in my life, I would not have made it. But in a world that often challenges us socially, economically, and emotionally, how do we draw strength not just from within but from each other? So this is a girl talk where girls are saying, how do we bring together in one table and become them Bogotos together?
Please, no, ladies.
So we're going to be speaking on this one and explore community support. Can it be a powerful force for healing, for growth and lasting resilience? We're going to be speaking to our guest from Kenya, Winnie Gaki, and Linda Mapupa, who is a public relations executive and also a TEDx organizer. And then we've got our Live Well later on, and we're speaking about recreation marijuana. How can it affect your health? That should be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to the conversations of the day. I hope you are too. And of course, to engage us, find us on our live streams, as Benjamin said, at Channel Africa 1. That's where you can find us on most of our social media accounts: Instagram, X, TikTok, YouTube, and on Facebook we are simply Channel Africa. We are live, so go over there, let us know where you're listening to us from, and of course engage in the conversations of the day. Let's take this 3-hour journey together. Welcome to On The Move.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. This is for when you have to wake your neighbors up. Weekends, 3 to 6 in the morning.
On that beautiful piano tip. This is Angelic, hanging out with Dem Tuda.
Using AI much more than developed market economies, which I thought was quite surprising. In fact, in South Africa, amongst the people we surveyed, 91% report using generative AI for their work.
Tech Africa every Sunday, 9 till 12 noon, Central African Time. 9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushata.
Yeah, I already know what it is, right? Mars on this.
on the move with myself, Benjamin Mushatama. In that song, Ziyakhipha, that's what we say here in South Africa, meaning it's happening in there. Very effervescent and very energetic wow there by Chanda Nekai featuring Amaderuch and Chef 187. Hey, let us know where you're listening from there on our live stream on Facebook. We want to know. Mike Mapala, I see you there. Where are you speaking to us from? I want to know. And Elinimo Golomi, where are you from? We've got so many people coming into that live stream. It's really exciting. Just let us know what city you are listening to us from, what hood you coming from on the African continent, what country, what city. We'd love to know where you are listening to Channel Africa from. Remember, our Facebook page is simply titled Channel Africa, and we want to get your insights on where you're listening to us, but also you can get into the conversation. Hey, we want you to also be part of this show, so let us know where you are listening to us from. I see YJ Kanjinga Piri is always there. I don't know if you and McDonald Piri are related. I see you are also there on the live stream at the same time. Thank you everybody for joining us here on The Move. Remember, you can also find us on DSTV channel 802, OpenView 628. Those are more traditional audio bouquet landscapes that you can find us on. And you can also stream us live on www.channelafrica.co.za. Let's get into today's subject matters. They're very interesting, right? And I'm looking forward to the one that is coming up. I'm not quite sure if it is an elitist conversation or it's something that we should be having as a mainstream. When there's so many disparities in a country like South Africa, you might think that something that should be like a norm is an elitist conversation, like teaching teachers trauma. When we're struggling with pet latrines in schools, when we are struggling with buildings themselves, when we don't offer sanitized pads to girls in schools, then you go to another conflation on top of that to say
overcrowded classrooms. Yeah,
and then you say trauma. Let's teach teachers trauma, and then teachers have to deal with all those challenges plus the trauma of their children.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like a lot, right? But at the end of the day, it is a learning and teaching environment, and it's important to really understand the complexities of human life, and those are the complexities of humans as well. And all of that mixed together with the challenges that we already face in many of our education systems on the continent.
Yeah, well, we're going to look at that a little bit later, but let's start with our Live Well feature today. We are discussing recreation marijuana. How can it affect your health? I know that in many countries, the use of marijuana remains legal. In other countries, it is. Here in South Africa, it is now illegal to use marijuana in a private environment.
Illegal?
It's legal.
Illegal, yes.
I said it's legal.
Okay, I thought you said illegal.
No. I know that you're an advocate for such. So I could hear the passion behind that.
No, I'm just making sure you have the right information.
No, we always have the right information. I'm your co-host, so definitely I'll make sure that people get the right information. So yeah, man, we're going to be looking at that. How can it affect your health? The recreation marijuana. Should we be looking out for that? I see you, Alex Wafasa Keenan, you're giving us love memes there. Thank you so much for giving us love. We love you too. Thank you for joining us on our live stream. We'll come to our Live Well feature after this break. Do stay with us.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous étions en train de savourer la chanson Démocratie.
Démocratie.
Ça veut dire quoi?
Démocratie, déjà, ça dérive de démocratie, qui est le régime dans lequel nous sommes, dans notre pays. Mais j'ai plutôt pensé que nous sommes plutôt dans une démocratie.
Pourquoi?
Où il y a une cruauté tellement une méchanceté des dirigeants envers la population. En fait, dans cette chanson, je suis en train de blâmer tout le monde. Je blâme et les dirigeants, qui pour moi sont des démocrates.
Oh, je suis maintenant en train de comprendre. Donc, démocratie. Oh
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Get set and be ready to go. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Hey, we can get super self-righteous when it comes to marijuana, right? And I have to be honest on this one. I do use marijuana in a recreational way, maybe not inhaling it, but I do actually enjoy using CBD products. But there's so many things that are now coming into the market, and I'm seeing it even in the malls where you have these marijuana stands everywhere where, you know, it's easily accessible, and we have to start thinking about the health elements on this one. You know, we call it pot, we call it weed. Some of you in your countries, you still call it ganja, and I know internationally there's that term that is, I think it's a United States a dominating term, Mary Jane. There are more than 1,000 slang terms in the English language to actually refer to marijuana, but sometimes we can become very too philosophical, very sentimental about marijuana. And in a handful of countries, including Georgia, Mexico, and South Africa, adult use of marijuana has been decriminalized, meaning possession and consumption of marijuana are legal. Cannabis use may have a wide range of health effects on the body and the brain, but we don't talk about those, do we? So let's find out from licensed cannabis practitioner and cannabis enterprise co-owner Mirishan Shoots. Thank you for joining us, Mirishan, on the show.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's a cool day today, isn't it? We're in Johannesburg. The weather feels a little bit nice today. There's a bit of a breeze. It's a bit chilly, but it's better than all these other days. Where are you joining us from, Mirishan?
We're here in Pretoria, and winter is definitely on its way here.
It's supposed to be warmer that side.
Yeah, it's a little bit warmer always in Pretoria than in Joburg.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about this, the health issues around cannabis. We shy away from them because it is exciting, all right, to have this license of just freely using this product that's been illegal for ages and ages and ages. And now we go free willingly to actually utilize this product, but we don't ask questions around it.
That's right. That's right. Yes. We've always got to remember that we still have an addiction rate when it comes to cannabis. Cannabis is not just for everybody. And because we have more than 22,000 strains, each with its own medical benefit, it is really important that you know who you're working with and that you know what strain you are using for whatever ailment you are fighting.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, as a cannabis practitioner, someone might say, are you not going against your business here because you should care less about the health of people and just go on selling? It's about the bottom line and making money out of it. Why are you so concerned about this health issue?
Well, this is a problem for us. If our practice can get it right that the government makes the age limit for cannabis 21 and not 18, we would be really happy with that. Due to the fact that your brain is still developing at 18, your prefrontal cortex only develops at the age of 25, so you make all of your decisions emotionally before that. And by using cannabis, we are working with the brain. So if I have kids that need cannabis, this will obviously be on the medical side, and we have to work with the oils and the capsules and the balms and so. But unfortunately, we do have a cannabis dispensary on every single corner now. Yeah. And because we don't have any regulations, there is possibility for people to get hurt. When I was a child, getting cannabis was impossible. You had to go buy it from a garage. Now, my 17-year-old daughter can walk into a shop and buy a 200, 300 milligram edible, and nobody's stopping her. Yeah. So that's what we're a little bit concerned about.
Tell us a little bit about that concern. What are you seeing as the dynamic of worry here?
So what cannabis does is, if we forget about the medical side, there are a lot of people who are using it for recreational purposes. And we are stuck in a society right now that just went through COVID. We are struggling with children who have antisocial anxiety, who are struggling to communicate with people, who are so stuck on their phones that they don't even know how to have a conversation with someone. And what cannabis does is it can remove you from your situation. So our worry is that we have children who are supposed to be speaking to psychologists or are supposed to be speaking to their parents, but now having a joint, locking themselves in their room, can become an issue.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at it. I thought that when you do purchase any cannabis product, at any point of sale, that you have to really reveal your age, right? I thought that was something that was mandatory in some stores. I've seen it actually happen in some stores when I've purchased some CBD products. Is that not happening everywhere?
Unfortunately, it's not happening everywhere. In our industry, we're a very small industry here in South Africa, so most of us know each other. We do have our people that've been involved in the industry for tens of years, and has been working with this product for a long time, and they know, they understand. But then, unfortunately, we do have people like as you say, who are just here for the money, who will sell anything to anybody without checking if they are on medicine or if they're taking something else, or what is the reason that you've decided to come for cannabis. Because if you walk into my store and you suddenly want to start smoking cannabis, I want to know why. Yeah. Why suddenly have you decided to come over to this plant? What is not helping in your life? You know, what is going wrong in your environment that you decided to go for this substance? What we're fighting for is a lot of education. The moment they made it legal, I've got 4 kids, right? The moment they made it legal, they stopped talking to our children at school about cannabis. Before that, they told the kids how bad cannabis is. Now they're not telling the kids anything. So we have a big plight to our Department of Education and our Department of Health to be able to speak to these children and still warn them that cannabis is not for everybody. Not everybody should be smoking a joint.
Yeah, I mean, we also have regulations around tobacco, for example. Should we use the same formula that we use for that particular industry? Because I think there are dangers around marijuana, the inhalation of marijuana, even CBD products that are edible. I think people have to do that in a regulated way. What's your take on the regulations?
No, absolutely, I agree. I think it's a little bit different than when we're talking about tobacco or alcohol, because cannabis is it is something that works with your brain, so it is psychoactive, where tobacco is not much so. So with cannabis, we can have a situation where someone consumes too much of it and then falls into either paranoia or extreme heart palpitations, and then this person is extremely uncomfortable. And then when they go to the doctor or the nurse and they explain to the nurse what happened, there's not much we can do for this person. Look, you cannot overdose on cannabis. Cannabis cannot kill you. So we don't have to worry about that. But it's still putting someone in an uncomfortable position where they're not 100% themselves for the next couple of hours, and they might think differently. And if they don't have someone there just to help them and guide them through what they're going through, it can have, some later effects.
Right, Mirushan, stay there on the line. We have to continue this conversation with you. I'm interested to our listener what they think on this one. What do you think the effects of marijuana are? Do you see the positive elements, but also how do you see the negative ones as well? Give us any side that you are seeing. What do you think the effect of using recreational marijuana is? Remember, our WhatsApp number is +27 63 406 9126. Let us know even on our live feed there. I see you, Sam Kaliati SC. Thank you for joining us there. Paul Bonjes, thank you for joining us as well, alongside Jackson Undi. It's 9:30 Central African time. Let's quickly move on right now and get our latest sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. We bet off and save with the tennis news. Mira Andreeva will face Coco Gauff in the quarterfinals at the 2025 WTA Madrid Open today. Andreeva celebrated a big fourth-round win at the Madrid Open on Monday, though she has another reason to celebrate. Tuesday marked Andreeva's milestone 18th birthday, a significant day for the Russian teen star who has electrified the WTA tour in recent years. Defying her age, Andreeva has already achieved great things early in her career and has now hit the latest impressive milestone in Madrid. It is another impressive milestone for her, who will go for 11th Madrid Open match win when she faces 4th seed Coco Gauff in today's quarterfinal. Namibia's junior women and men's hockey teams have successfully qualified for the upcoming Junior World Cups, set to take place in Chile and India respectively. Their qualification follows a strong showing at the Junior Africa Cup held in Windhoek, where they competed against top continental teams. In the women's competition, South Africa proved dominant, winning all 5 of the matches to top the standings with 15 points. Namibia finished in second place after securing 4 victories, giving them a total of 12 points. Zimbabwe claimed third place after a decisive win over Uganda, with all 3 teams earning a spot at the Junior Women's World Cup in Chile. The men's tournament followed a similar pattern, with South Africa finishing first after winning all 5 of their matches to collect 15 points. Namibia came in second with 4 wins and 12 points, while Egypt secured the bronze medal position. These teams will now head to the Junior Men's World Cup in India. On to football news. Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, seized the advantage in the Champions League semi-final against Arsenal as Ousmane Dembele sealed a 1-0 win in the first leg. Dembele struck in the opening minutes at the Emirates Stadium, and Luis Enrique's side held on to the lead with a composed display that kept Arsenal at bay. PSG will head into the second leg at the Parc des Princes on the 7th of May as favourites to reach the final against Barcelona or Inter Milan, as they look to win the tournament for the first time. But French champions should take nothing for granted given their history of epic European collapses. Arsenal's first defeat in 18 home European matches was a painful blow to their own bid to win a first Champions League crown. Now on to cricket news. The Proteas women fell to a 15-run defeat in the ODI Tri-Series opener against India in Colombo, despite a valiant century from Tasmin Bretts. Set a target of 277, Bretts and captain Laura Volvart gave the Proteas the perfect start when the duo put on 140 for the first wicket. Brett says the conditions were difficult to play under.
Yeah, so I think in general the heat over here on the subcontinents and the humidity is something that no South African is actually used to. So it was a bit tough for me, especially with us fielding first in 50 overs. And then batting of course so long. So yeah, I got a few cramps and I struggled a bit, but yeah, the heat definitely won today.
The Proteas women will take on host nation Sri Lanka in their next encounter at the same venue on Friday. Brett says she didn't think she would have to come back after the cramps.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping I didn't have to come back on due to the cramps, but I mean, I'm always eager to try and contribute and help the team where I can. Yeah, it's not always a nice feeling. Sometimes I wonder if I maybe batted a bit longer or pushed myself a bit more, maybe we wouldn't have been in that situation, but I guess at the end of the day that is cricket. And yeah, of course I would have loved to get the team over the line.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et votre 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Benjamin and Palesa on the move.
All right, man. It is 35 minutes past 9 o'clock Central African time. Let's move from sports and get our business news.
Out and About with Puleng Mulibati.
Met Patricia Delil with us talking about just the growth and the development that South Africa is experiencing in terms of the tourism sector, which is also one of the driving contributors to the growth of the South African economy. What would you say are factors that are driving the positive trajectory in South Africa's tourism sector, Minister?
The whole value chain, and I always get feedback to say that, South Africans are so friendly, the Ubuntu spirit. So our people are our biggest asset. And what we've also seen is that South Africa's value for money, and that we are eternally grateful for our African brothers and sisters. Because in 2023, we received 8.5 million visitors, and 6.5 came from the continent.
Minister of Tourism, Patricia de Lille.
Out and About comes to you every Saturday, 9 till 12 noon, Central African Time. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning. Kenya's inflation rate in April rose to 4.1% year-on-year, up from 3.6% a month before. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says on a monthly basis inflation was at 0.3% in April. Kenya's inflation rate has risen steadily since a low of 2.7% in October, but remains well within the central bank's 2.5 to 7.5 target range. Earlier this month, the Kenya Central Bank cut its policy interest rate for the fifth meeting in a row to 10.0%, a surprise move aimed at further stimulating private sector lending. Still in East Africa, Uganda's proposed budget for the 2025-2026 financial year has grown 25% to $19.6 billion compared to the previous projection of $441 billion given in September. The ministry did not provide a reason for the raise. In a statement posted on X on Tuesday, the government previously said spending priorities in the financial year starting July would be in agro-industrialization, tourism and minerals, including petroleum. South Africa's Small Business Development Minister, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, says that the ocean's economy is there to benefit South Africans at large. Ndabeni, who has referred to the ocean's economy as South Africa's next gold mine, says it was important that everyone, including residents of townships, benefit. She stressed the importance of sustainable fishing, tourism, shipping, aquaculture, as well as oil and gas exploration and the preservation of the health of the maritime economy.
We have been given fishing rights and we're trying to assist them because most of them, they will complain that they don't have infrastructure. They are forced to go and fish, but they don't have access to market. As a result, they're being exploited. Now we're coming to step in to say this is the opportunity that must not only be exploited by those who can afford. How do we step in as the department? By ensuring that we provide them with the infrastructure.
Manufacturing activity in China has fallen this month more sharply than economists had predicted. The Purchasing Managers Index dropped from its highest level in a year last month. This as US President Donald Trump's tariffs kicked in along with retaliatory taxes that China has imposed. The BBC's Nick Mosh has the details.
The extent of this drop is down in part to a flurry of exports last month as manufacturers rushed to ship out goods just before the tariffs kicked in. Last week, policymakers in Beijing announced more stimulus measures to try and help domestic consumers spend more and ease the economy off of its reliance on exports to the United States. Neither side so far has made the first move towards negotiations in this trade war, which China's leadership has vowed to fight until the bitter end if necessary.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 601. Botswana 13 bula 537. Kenya 128 shilling 42 and Zambia 27 kwacha 87. The BRICS countries in Brazil the dollar 5 real 64. Russia 82 rubles 9. India 85 rupees 16. China 7 yuan 27. And in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 53. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Gold $3,311. Platinum $972 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.25 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Well, we continue with our Live Well feature. Today we're finding out the effects of recreational marijuana. I mean, we've heard so much about some of the benefits of marijuana, and that's why it's been legalized in many countries across the world and some on the continent as well, just like South Africa. However, sometimes in many circumstances, it almost seems as though we've trivialized the use of cannabis just because of its decriminalization. We're still speaking to licensed cannabis practitioner and cannabis enterprise co-owner Mirishin Shoot. Thank you so much for staying with us, Mirishin. Let's speak about that, the trivialization, right? And it seems like the trivialization comes from the lack of awareness and education, and I guess sort of the mindset that just because something is legal, that means it's good and can't be bad for you.
That's right. That's the situation that we're sitting with. Cannabis is not for everybody, as I said, and you really need to work with someone who understands the plant and understands the human body before you just consume cannabis.
Now let's speak, you've spoken a lot about children in particular, because we have a huge problem because of the lack of a lot of policies around marijuana here in South Africa in particular. It seems like it's becoming easily accessible for children and without the proper education, as we've just said. Can cannabis lead to psychosis?
So this is the thing with psychosis. Anything can lead to psychosis. If you are prone to psychosis, a big car accident can cause it. Consuming too much alcohol can cause it. Consuming too much cannabis can cause it. So unfortunately, we cannot say that cannabis causes psychosis. It is the person itself and whatever they are going through. And this is why it's so important that the practitioner or the person at the shop that you're working with knows what you're going through and understands what you're going through to make sure that this doesn't happen. We've got to remember what psychosis means. Psychosis means is that you're just temporarily confused. You're just not yourself at that moment. And this can happen with anything. So we can't blame cannabis for causing psychosis, but we need to be careful who we give this plant to.
Mm-hmm. Earlier on, you were speaking about regulation, and you're saying that it won't be regulated as the same as other industries. What are you offering as a solution here?
So we've been fighting. This plant was given to us in 2018 when they made it available for us to use in our private home or our private, we can grow it for ourselves. And because this plant cannot cause any deaths, the regulation needs to be specific around it. With cannabis, we like to microdose. So when we started off 11 years ago, we had edibles ranging from 100 milligrams to 400 milligrams per edible. When now, if we look at what's going on now, the biggest selling edible in America is a 2.5 milligram gummy. Yeah. So it's important for us to understand that microdosing is actually the way we need to go with cannabis. We don't need to give people so much of it and make them uncomfortable. So we work on the recreational side. We have a recreational shop, but we also have a medical side. And it's interesting, too, that we just know that there's a lot of my recreational people who are not on the medical side because they are consuming cannabis recreationally. They are having a joint or an edible before they go to bed so that they can have a proper sleep, not necessarily having an edible to go have a party. So there's this line between the two that we still need to chat about.
I mean, just recently there was a hoo-ha here in South Africa about marijuana, where there were kind of a ban on the sale of certain products that are related to cannabis, and that was also reversed as well. Seems like the government doesn't know what to do. What do you think the process should be to actually regulate the space? Because I think there should be that consultative process that hasn't happened between the industry and government, and I think a big imbizo, as we call them here in South Africa, should happen, where you as an industry sit down with the government and you come with some form of consensus or a middle ground of how to move forward.
It is so difficult, my human. I mean, even the first world countries struggled when they rolled this out, because this is such a complex plant. This is not like a discipline where we're dealing with one molecule. Cannabis has more than 500 molecules inside each plant that we are working with. So now explaining this to a doctor and making it available for everybody it's a difficult situation. And that's why we haven't had any rules or regulations being able to give to us, because this plant has been illegal for 96 years. Everybody thought that dacha is chocha, right? And now suddenly it is a healing plant, and we've got capsules and we've got creams, and we can help people every all the way through to having pain.
Yeah.
So it's just such a big, broad spectrum of things we need to talk about, and it does get confusing.
Well, let's leave it there. But what advice would you give an ordinary person who is pro-marijuana? What would you say they should do in order to be careful?
So I would teach every single person, if you're now using marijuana or not, the most important thing that you would always need to do is get to know your body. We are all different. What works for me does not necessarily work for you, does not necessarily work for someone else. So if I can teach every person in South Africa, the main thing is to get to know who you are, how your mind works, how your body works, what you need, and then we can take it from there. Don't just go look for a silver bullet, because yes, cannabis is amazing when it comes to everything from pain to cancer. We've seen some incredible things on illnesses that we didn't think was able to be solved that has been helped with cannabis. But you need to know who you are, and you need to know what your body needs. We have been taken so far away from ourselves, and that we need to find healing outside of ourselves, instead of understanding that you are your only healer. Nobody can heal you.
And you know what? People they're so desperate to get high these days in South Africa. It's like, guys, can't we cope anymore sober?
So this is the thing. We need to chat about that.
Well, thank you so much.
Time,
Well, we have to wrap it up. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But thank you for joining us, Marishan.
Have a beautiful day, guys.
Well, that's Marishan Shute, who's a licensed cannabis practitioner and cannabis enterprise co-owner. That's for our Live Well feature for today. How can recreational marijuana affect your health? What do you think about this one? Do you trust using marijuana? Do you know how far to go? We were just laughing about it off air with Palesa, and I was saying, just try a little bit and then you'll see how far you can go.
Trial and error.
And I think that's the problem, because you just don't know how far you can actually
and also, I think it's also about why. Why are you using it? I mean, at the end of the day, it can't just be because you see other people using it. Like, maybe we should try it. And everyone has their own particular reason. So I would agree with Marishan in the sense that you need to really get to know yourself a little bit before you even try and experiment with anything. And even if you have used marijuana before, you have to think about the kinds of products that you're using, because sometimes you may have consumed it in one way and then you think, automatically it's going to be fine if I use it in another way, maybe in a smoking method, in an edible method, maybe even in an oil method, etc. Those may have their different effects, and you can't just throw yourself knee deep. But if you do a little bit just a little bit.
Yeah, but a little bit is also a bit relative to different people, right?
Right.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this one. +27634 406 9126. Maybe we should put up a poll. We'll speak to our producer in the background on this one, because I don't know how far you can go on this one. It's very difficult. Do you start? Do you not start? And some people are saying that marijuana is addictive. Is it addictive? Yeah. So, yeah, thanks everyone as well. We see you on our live feed there. Thanks to Ruth Tsabola. see you there. Frank Peter and Alfred Zulu. Let us know where you're listening to Channel Africa from. Where are you watching the live stream from? We love you having you here. So welcome on board our little information bus that we're on right now. We're going to continue with a whole lot more that's coming up on the show. But remember, you can let us know on the different topics that we're speaking on our different platforms. Remember, WhatsApp number is still there for you, +2763 406 9126. It's 9:50 Central African Time.
No fairy tales, just the facts and the music you love on Channel Africa.
speak with last year when she was collaborating with a whole lot of South African artists. That's Tina Ador with the DJ Spew. That one is titled I'll Be There. yeah, that's very interesting what we're talking about this hour. But I mean, I don't know. I also find like things very problematic when it comes to just normal medication, for instance, right? When you think about like just medication that you use on a daily and the dosages that you take, do you think every product that's even regulated is also complied to, or whatever the regulations? Do you think they work overall? Because even when it comes to regulated substances, somehow people have a way of getting stuff and getting hold of things.
The thing is, people will always find a way, right?
Yeah.
And even as we stand right now in South Africa, as an example, our cannabis industry is highly unregulated. All we know is the legalities or the criminalizations of certain substances, etc. But you can find anything everywhere. We have, great policies around tobacco, great policies around alcohol, but it still doesn't mean that the regulation is being adhered to.
Yeah, because children under the age of 18
are smoking, they're drinking, they're doing all of this. And at the end of the day, you can only do so much in terms of policy making or regulatory requirements, because you cannot make the people or the individuals themselves to adhere to these regulations. Yes, there are laws that you can put in place perhaps for those sellers, etc., but there's always going to be an underground market in various places, as we see a highly underground market in the cannabis industry now. But that's of course due to the unregulation. But even in regulated markets, there are underground markets too, so people will always find a way. I think all we can do is, when it comes to children themselves, parents, guardians need to take responsibility, because it can't just be about government and policy. Parents and guardians need to take the responsibilities they need to. Communities need to take responsibility as well in various ways. And that's the issue, right? We look away. Even when we speak about alcohol regulation, you can go to a weekend in the township, right? And you'll find young people underage, under 18, which is the legal age in which you can drink here in South Africa. They have the alcohol in their hands. They're walking in the streets. Some of them are drunk and nobody's saying anything. We're all turning a blind eye.
Yeah, I think also it's also about our human behavior, right? Just because something is legalized and is everywhere and is now accessible, that doesn't mean that we have to go for it. I think sometimes we think that a law sets a standard for our behavior. So if something is easily available, then you should quickly just go and get it and try it out, because you know what, everyone else is doing it, so I'm also going to try it out. I always say, when it comes to advising people out, even around the positive elements of, CBD, I'm like, research yourself. Make sure that when you start using these products, that it's going to implicate your health, number one. And number two, that it's your decision based on your own moral value system. And don't do it because everyone else says it's great. It's great for your mind. It's great for you to ease out, to take it easy, or just to relax. We always use those kind of terms just to make things like, we're trivializing
it, because it's so easy to get, and this is how it works for me. But people are not really using their own agency, right? Use your own thought processes. Think about why you want to do something particularly, and it's okay not to. Just remember that it's also okay just not to do it.
When you ask someone like, hey, at a party or something, are you not drinking? And the person says, no.
Why don't you drink?
How do you have
try
fun?
it? It's so not. No, it's okay.
It's okay not to do it. I promise you, it's okay not to drink at a party. It's okay to feel like you're having fun without drinking, and that's the thing. Sometimes even with cannabis, I think we do that a lot. We assign certain items to a certain type of behavior, especially coolness or a certain facade of being, and then we kind of saying that's the good reason why you should be doing that. So what's your take on that? What do you think are the health implications of recreational marijuana? Give us your thoughts on +27 63 406 9126. You can text us or voice note us there. And hey, let us know know on our live feed where you are listening to us from. Remember, we do have that live stream that you can find on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1 on Instagram and our YouTube page. Those are the pages where you can find our stream, but also you can find it on our Facebook page, which is simply titled Channel Africa. Thank you, Alex Guanera Weston. Thank you, Lina Chabwera, for joining us. It's 10:00 hours Central African time. Joalana is back. She's going to let us know what's happening in the news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Good morning. Concerns over a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by jihadists and Vietnam marks the 50th anniversary of the capture of the city of Saigon. Security experts say a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by Boko Haram and its splinter rival ISWAP has raised fears of a major comeback by jihadists, whose tactics now include armed drones and explosive devices planted on major roads. At least 22 people were killed in weekend raids by militants in Adamawa and Borno states, while 26 others died on Monday after an explosive device ripped into two vehicles in Borno. Dozens more have been killed by a string of jihadist attacks since January. In Borno State, Governor Babagana Zulum has warned that insurgents were making gains with little pushback from the military. Security experts attributed the resurgence to a lull in fighting between Boko Haram and Islamic West Africa province ISWAP and the adoption of aerial technology by the groups. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. Operations were halted due to a major advance of Rwandan-backed M23 rebels in Eastern DRC. Sharon Bryce Pease has the story.
Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe confirmed to SABC News that they were providing safe passage to Sami DRC and the equipment from their troop-contributing countries, which include South Africa, Malawi and Tanzania. SADC decided to terminate its deployment in eastern Congo following the deaths of 17 soldiers, bringing their December 2023 deployment to help restore peace in eastern Congo in support of the DRC government to a rapid end. Sami DRC troops were confined to their bases for months following the Rwandan-backed M23 advance in the region. Reports suggest the Sami DRC convoy will travel to Chato in northwestern Tanzania before repatriation to various countries.
The widow of popular Nigerian gospel singer Osinachi Nwachukwu has been sentenced to death by hanging in connection with her death 3 years ago. The 42-year-old singer was initially said to have died of throat cancer before her family went public with allegations of domestic violence. They accused her husband Peter Nwachukwu of abusing the singer, which ultimately led to her death. A judge convicted him on 23 charges, including culpable homicide, and gave him the maximum sentence. It's unclear if Nwachukwu, who denied the charges, will be executed as the authorities really implement the death sentence. And US President Donald Trump has agreed to hold talks with Mark Carney, who was re-elected as Canada's Prime Minister in a poll that the US President dominated. Trump's tariff and threats of annexation have been credited with helping Canada's Liberal Party to secure a fourth term. The BBC's Liz Doucette has the story.
The fact that they have secured a fourth term with a novice politician, Mark Carney, the central banker and economist turned politician, has led this country with his mantra of Canada Strong, presenting himself the man who can protect the country in a time of crisis, most of all against the threats of President Trump, not just to level the tariffs, which are already having an impact here, but also the fact that President Trump keeps mentioning how Canada would be better off as the 51st state.
Vietnam is marking the 50th anniversary of the capture of the city of Saigon by North Vietnamese forces with speeches, music and a military parade. The country's Communist Party chief Tao Lam says it had been a victory of justice over tyranny. The BBC's Rupert Wingfield-Hayes has the story.
There are hundreds of thousands of people out celebrating today what is called Reunification Day. There has been a very large military parade this morning. People are now heading to another celebration later on today. If you ask people here, what is today all about? Is it about the victory of the North over the South in 1975? Is it about the victory of communism over capitalism? They will shake their heads. They say this is about ending more than a century of foreign domination and division of Vietnam and the country getting back its sovereignty and its independence.
Recapping the top story, the SAWA security experts say a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by Boko Haram and its splinter rival ISWAP has raised fears of a major comeback by jihadists whose tactics now include armed drones and explosive devices planted on major roads. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel African News, I'm Cholani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
It's a 3-hour journey where you and ourselves get to have conversations around the African perspective. We're going into our Becoming feature in this hour of the show, and we're concentrating on women, which is important because women do go through quite a number of issues on the African continent, but more so they've been pillars of strength in families, in villages, in cities, and many communities, allowing for communities to thrive. And at the heart of that have been women. I have always been against the theory of women being the pillars of strength, even for myself, coming from a community where women are the pillars of strength. But my issue is not the fact that women can be pillars of strength. My issue is there's a lack of support in women being the pillars. So all there is a lot of pressure, a lot of weight. Being a pillar is something quite significant, isn't it? It means that you hold up entire buildings, even if you are going through your own challenges as well. And I'm saying no, I don't think that we should still be living like that as women these days. I think it's important not just to get external support, but to also create communities where we support one another. If I look back at my own communities where I was born and raised, I see how women have also gathered together, come together to become co-support structures for one another as pillars in those communities as well. So we're actually going deeper into that conversation, how we can explore community support as a powerful force of healing, growth, and lasting resilience, especially for African women navigating the layered challenges of the continent. We'll be joined on the line by our guest to have this conversation, and of course by you to help us unpack this particular one. Imbokoto, that means a rock. Usually in South Africa we have a phrase, watinta bafazi watinti bogoto. You strike a woman, you strike a rock. And I'm saying in particular, no, I am not a rock. I am a human. And for many times women have positioned themselves as rocks. In fact, I feel like they've been positioned as rocks because there have been no other avenues to find that support. So perhaps with the right support, we can stop being rocks and just be humans and enjoy the luxuries of being part of the human experiences as well.
Yeah, man, I differ because I've had many rocks in my life, and rocks not meaning that you are this static thing that stands in one place and don't have any agency, but I think at times that rock symbol means that you are someone who is of strength and a pillar to others. And I have had that in my life where women are that, in many ways. So I can shout out to all the mothers and the grandmothers and the aunts in our communities that have been rocks. But what's also been interesting is to see how women can gather together in our communities and our strength to one another at times. What's your take on that? Bali and I have a different view of what that rock symbolizes, and maybe we are both right in our own views and there's no wrongs in this one. Give us your thoughts in terms of our becoming topic today on our WhatsApp number +276 469126.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live. 5 days a week.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Her name is Puleng Mulibati, and she's on Tech Africa.
Leading the tech conversation every single Sunday on Channel Africa.
Robotic process automation, just from a definitive perspective, is a software that emulates human activity for us to be able to remove mundane, repetitive tasks and build efficiency. That's what it means from a definitive perspective. Now, where exactly has this been reused? Or has people seen this or familiar with? Now, you'd have seen probably in the automotive industry, these big robots that are moving large objects and assembling them. And it's generally to assist the particular production process to be more efficient and also to be able to avoid any injuries from human activity, to be able to lift these heavy objects that can cause harm.
And one of the key findings I think that stands out for me is that developing market economies and people are using AI much more than developed market economies, which I thought was quite surprising. In fact, in South Africa, amongst the people we surveyed, 91% report using generative AI for their work.
Tech Africa every Sunday, 9 till 12 noon, Central African Time. On the move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the move.
It's 12 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. You tuned in to On the Move right here on Channel Africa. And it seems like we speak a lot about women, right? And yes, we do, because for many times we see and observe not just the strengths, but the challenges that women face on the African continent. And in order to sort of slowly remove some of the social ills that we are part of on a daily basis here on the African continent, it's women that we need to support, the same women who support us, the same women who seem to be the pillars of our homes, the pillars of our villages, the pillars of our community at large. And across the continent, we see that it's the strength of women that really allows for the flourishing of ourselves and our societies in many different ways. But even in those strengths, women still find themselves at a large disadvantage. I mean, Ben and I have our own views when it comes to that. As a woman myself, I feel like it is in individual protest to say I am not a rock, simply because women don't stand as the rocks and the pillars of our communities from my observation by choice, but they stand there because of a lack of support elsewhere. And because if without women if we don't become the pillars, then the communities will definitely break down. And so instead we step in a world where nobody else stepping in for us in a world where we're left alone and left without the support, but also with the external pressure sort of coming against us. So not only are we the pillars trying to keep the communities afloat, but at the same time it feels like we're being punched in the gut at the same moment. And that's why in personal protest I'm like, I'm not a pillar, I'm not a rock. I choose to be a human who also navigates her human experiences without these particular societal expectations of me.
That would be a convenient thought to say that, because for many women they don't have a choice. I don't have a choice either. Let me just making an example quickly, so I can give context to what I mean. I mean it in a sense whereby our mothers didn't have a choice but to become those people who they had to be there for us. I mean, I was raised by a single mother for a long time, and she was the only support that we had in our lives. Yes, there was no one there for her, and I'm not excusing the absence of my father, because I felt the ramifications and the consequences of being a fatherless man. But if my mother wasn't there, and I don't think it was something voluntary that she could volunteer, or she could say, well, I don't want to do this. She just innately had that way of just being there for me. Did I deserve that? I don't think so. Was she supposed to give it to me? I don't think so too. I don't think she didn't have an agency. She shouldn't have an agency to have walked away from that situation, but she was there. And I note that, and I think it's remarkable that you have women that actually do that. I prize those women, I hold up those women, and I say they're wonderful to have them in our lives, and it's fantastic that we've had that privilege for them to help us through the obstacles that we've faced in our histories.
I agree with that completely. In fact, I can relate completely, and that's why I'm saying it's actually not, neither is it a privilege or a choice, because even today we still find ourselves in those very circumstances. Exactly like your mother, I'm a single mother myself, and without that external support, I have to stand there as the pillar. But the protest is not in being the pillar or standing up for, the parts of life that I have to step up without the support. It's in saying, even within these circumstances, I will find a way to not just be typecast as a pillar, but to also be seen in society as many other things outside of that. But hey, we're having this conversation together. We have on the line with us Linda Mububa, public relations executive and TEDx organizer, exploring how community support can be a powerful force for healing, growth, and lasting resilience, especially for African women. Linda, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you heard a little bit of Ben and I's debate. I don't even think it's a debate, because in many ways we're agreeing with one another, just from very different perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good morning to you guys. No, I definitely was listening in on what you guys were saying, and I have to agree. Women are definitely the pillar. We have no option but to be the pillar or the backbone of our communities, be it the general community or your very close community, and that is your family and your friends. So it's really imperative that women create a sisterhood of some sorts where you can actually, gain strength, draw strength from other sisters. And that is why it's important that we attend what is women empowerment event. Somebody once said to me, they don't see the benefit of attending a women empowerment event where you just pay $300 Namibian and you listen to people speak. But that is underestimating the power of storytelling. Women actually heal when they listen to stories. They kind of feel they belong somewhere when they relate to another story of pain, of healing, and just sharing each other's journeys and experiences is a method and a way for women to heal and tap into another woman's strength. So it's really, really important that as women, we also just draw from each other, create communities that benefit all of us, of course. It's always really important that women have somebody that they can lean back on. And in many cases, that person that you lean on is always a woman, all right? So it's a community for women is not optional. It's a given and it is a must. It can always, like you said, your mother, as a mother, you have to stand in and sometimes take care of your kids. You know, in a household, when a child is sick, it's almost always ever the mother who stays home and takes care of that child, whereas the father is not willing to put in leave for the day. You understand? So it's really important for women to just realize their strength, their power, and that is the only way that as women we can break any type of barriers, any type of ceiling barriers that are put up against us. You know, once we realize our power as women, we can do so much more.
The term community has really taken a huge change, Linda. If I can speak just about how I was raised, and I've seen the stories of, you know, how women before that were raised, they always used to come together in ways that were beneficial for the community at large. But even in those sense of communities, it always seems like women put themselves at the back burner. I'll speak for myself and say, growing up in a place where a woman was, my mother, a cornerstone of this particular community. In fact, when you drive into or walk into my community, my house, my mother's house, is the first house that you'll come across there. And every day was like a rotating door at my own house where women were coming in and out and men were coming in and out, all of them seeking help, seeking attention, seeking counsel from my mother, and many of them just trying to help other people as well, and not particularly also trying to help themselves. And I'm really interested in the sense of community for self-preservation and not only for community preservation. So keep that in mind. We need to take a break, and I want us to come back and explore that, because that's why I say I don't want to be a rock, because I also want women to use our own power for the preservation of self, including the preservation of others. But it seems like most of the time women focus more on the preservation of others and keep their self-preservation in the back burner. It's 20 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. We're speaking about the power of community for African women. Still joining us on the line is Linda Mopupa, who'll continue this conversation with us in a bit.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Africa, it's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. On the move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. Hashtag on the move.
Hey, I was very ill very recently, very sick, and I was in hospital. And what happened is that I saw women just like becoming this parade of life source in my life, actually. Who walked through the doors of that hospital that I was in? It was the woman in my life. Who were the ladies that were calling me? It was the woman in my life, my mother's life, was sending me messages of encouragement, of faith, of strength. And I think about it when we speak about this conversation. If it wasn't for all those women who are praying for me, giving that moral support, even now as an adult, I don't think I would have recovered in the same way. Shout out to my girlfriend who came in and out every single day. Like Palesa was saying and Linda was saying, she actually left work, her lunch breaks. She came to the hospital to make sure that I'm well fed, to look out for me. So, you know, this rock thing, I do see that sometimes we use it as a negative connotation, but I have to say, I needed those pillars in my life. I needed those women in my life, and I needed that community of women. Where were the guys? Because I was in hospital alone as a man, not even just one guy came through. Just one guy came through and came to see me during that particular period. So it says a lot about women. But you wanted to ask a question, and you can go back and ask that question.
Yeah, well, we still have on the line with us Linda Mupupa, who's joining us in this conversation, speaking about, you know, the essence of community when it comes to, you know, women on the African continent. And the way I was going with that, Linda, is that we speak a lot about community support of women in our lives. And women are these pillars of strength. And when I was relaying the story of the various women that came in and out of my home as I was growing up, all the things that they came there to solve were always issues of other people and hardly ever issues of taking care of self. And in my personal protest of saying I am not a rock, I am saying that yes, there are things that I have to do because I don't have a choice, and I still do have to be that pillar, but sometimes I want to use that strength of a woman for self-preservation. And I want to take a look at that, using community for the self-preservation of women. Are we doing that enough, or do we continue to keep ourselves in the back burner and burn out?
No, you know what they say about spreading love, kindness? It's sort of like sharing perfume. When you share perfume, a drop will definitely fall onto you. So this is what I think happens here. You know, our thriving and survival is deeply interconnected with other people. So what we do to help raise and help strengthen others, and also perhaps just alleviate their problems, it equally also helps us alleviate our problems. If you open up your heart to sharing, to caring for others, it does something to you. You know, it kind of just lifts a burden off of your shoulders when you're.
It does not, Linda. I don't want to lie to you. It really does not. Not for me, anyway. I'm sorry. Please do continue.
That is why. But then again, that is why we've got sisterhood organizations and initiatives where we provide mentorships, you know, where we provide emotional healing for sisters. And of course, at these events, we also give practical resources and suggestions and advices to other women to preserve your own sanity, your own strength. And that is why also it's important that once in a while, a woman steps away from the usual. You know, we've got so many overlapping challenges as women. You know, there's so much that you have to take care of at times that you forget to take care of yourself. But there's a reminder for all women to take some time out, step out of the usual schedule, step out of the busy schedule, and then just, you know, enclose yourself in a space where you feel safe, where you can actually just be yourself, you know, reintegrate into who you really are, your true identity. Find and explore who you really are. And that is where your strength comes from. Unfortunately, society doesn't always, especially in a setting where you're a mother or a wife, it doesn't always award you the opportunity to step away from your identity as a mother or as a wife. But it's imperative that you realize that you need to close down on other people at times, and then, of course, find your strength. It could be, you know, delving into a book, an interesting book, taking a walk alone. There's so many things that women can incorporate into their daily lives to find themselves and then also find that strength from within. I understand, Palesa, that it could be draining. You're always the giver, and we know that takers don't know when to stop. So it's your prerogative. It's basically you have to know when to stop giving, because takers never know when to stop. All right. So there are so many opportunities that we've got digital platforms, digital sisterhood communities that also teach us on how one can just step out and try and find yourself again, or just try and find your strength. So we need to explore the different options, the different opportunities, and the different platforms that allow us and award us the opportunities to find strength, be it from other sources such as the Bible, be it from sources such as watching, for example, Mpumi sharing her story. There are so many platforms. There's an array of platforms where we can explore as women to try and find ourselves and be that pillar for yourself and not just the pillar for others.
Yeah, I think I get what Bali is saying to a large degree, you know, like, do these gatherings take us away from that stereotype of what we want women to be in our society in terms of that imposition that we have at times to say, you are in Bogota, you can deal with it. You are the mother of this house. You must do these chores. Are we not entrenching that to a certain degree by saying the only place that women find that particular getaway is in that particular community? But I'll tell you why I think also it's a two-ended question, because that community of women is also important, because without that group of women, some women can't get out of that abusive environment. Some women can't get out of that moment of getting advice from outside of that little space, which is their home. Maybe that avenue of being with other women can also be a great escape away, not just from a momentary struggle, but permanently getting out of a bad situation.
Exactly. I mean, when you are in a safe space with other women, you are drawing from their wisdom, you are learning from their experiences. And then the art of storytelling is so magnificent that you start feeling as though you belong. You start feeling as though you're not the only one going through something. Like, come to think of it, now that you have highlighted it, it appears that these are the only spaces where women can get away and find themselves. But if that is the case, then so be it. Women attend more of these events then, there's so much happening now. You could do it digitally, you can do it across borders. The world has become a whole village, a global village. So there's nothing that is holding you back anymore from attending as many events as possible that allow you to share a space with women who revitalize who you actually are. Like I say, if you have a chance to get away and join other women in a platform that empowers you, that rejuvenates and heals you, go ahead and make use of that platform. Not always do you have a place to go to escape your real life, but apart from this space. So make use of it, be it physically, be it digitally. Listen, women, the spaces are available. Let's use them.
Yeah, I agree with you there on that one. It's 10:30 Central African time. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. But thank you so much, Linda, for giving us your time and giving us your thoughts on this one. Where can people find your space and your platforms and what you do as a public relations expert, but also in your public speaking?
Well, I'm a public speaking. You could find me on Instagram. Organizer, and we will be having our first TEDx event in September this year. So check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter, for the TEDx Vineta women platforms as well as the TEDx Swakopmund platforms. And I can guarantee you that you will be finding a safe space for women where we passionately pioneer leadership amongst women, where we encourage each other to break the highest of glass ceilings. So if you're a woman who needs a safe space, check out the TEDx Veneta women as well as the TEDx Swakopmund platforms, and then of course the formidable Linda on Instagram.
Thank you so much, Linda. That's Linda Mupupa, Public Relations Executive and also TEDx Organizer. Well, let's quickly move on right now and get our sports. Figile Lingwati is standing by.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's start with Olympics. The South African Sports Confederation Olympic and Paralympic Committee, SASCOC President Barry Hendricks, highly compliments his organization's sports business model. Speaking to Channel Africa Sport, Hendricks unpacks SASCOC's model and confidently recommends it to other African countries.
So there are various aspects to providing a stable organization. One is you ensure that your policies are in place and you only operate within your policies. This can be finance policies, HR policies, travel policies, and a whole host of others. But then also tied to those policies, you have each different unit of the business, such as the administration or operations of the organization. You have programs of the operations, and then you also have this oversight and strategic oversight from what you call the executive of the board. You have to separate the areas of responsibility from the board, which is oversight and strategy, from that of the CEO and the staff, which is operations and implementation.
Hendricks is also the chairperson of the Gauteng Sports Council. He compares SASCOC's sports business model with other countries such as Australia, England and Canada.
Yes, Australia, England, Canada have got similar models to ours. Even Canada has got an Olympic foundation and a Paralympic foundation. United Nations has got the same thing. So as we travel and go to several meetings, and let me inform your listeners that SASCOC is the only organization in the world that has the Olympics, Paralympics, Commonwealth Games, World Games, School Games, Africa Games, Africa Beach Games, all under one umbrella.
Football news: Paris Saint-Germain PSG seized the advantage in their Champions League semi-final against Arsenal as Ousmane Dembele sealed a 1-0 win in the first leg. Dembele struck in the opening minutes at the Emirates Stadium, and Luis Enrique's side held on to the lead with a composed display that kept Arsenal at bay. PSG will head into the second leg at the Parc des Princes on the 7th of May as favourites to reach the final against Barcelona on Inter Milan, as they look to win the tournament for the first time. But the French champions should take nothing for granted given their history of epic European collapses. Arsenal's first defeat in 18 home European matches was a painful blow to their own bid to win a first Champions League crown. Now on to tennis news. Mira Andreeva will face Coco Gauff in the quarterfinals at the 2025 WTA Madrid Open tournament today. Andreeva celebrated a big fourth-round win at the Madrid Open on Monday, though she has another reason to celebrate. Tuesday marked Andreeva's milestone 18th birthday, a significant day for the Russian teen star who has electrified the WTA Tour in recent years. Defying her age, Andreeva has already achieved great things early in her career and has now hit her latest impressive milestone in Madrid. It is another impressive milestone for Andreeva, who will go for her 11th Madrid Open match win when she faces 4th seed Coco Gauff in today's quarterfinal. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figure Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et votre 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
All right, it is time for us to move on now and get our business news from Thabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Benjamin, and good morning. Kenya's inflation rate in April rose to 4.1% year-on-year, up from 3.6 months before. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says on a monthly basis, inflation was at 0.3% in April. Kenya's inflation rate has risen steadily since a low of 2.7% in October, but remains well within the central bank's 2.5 to 7.5 target range. Earlier this month, Kenya's central bank cut its policy interest rate for the fifth meeting in a row to 10.0%, a surprise move aimed at further stimulating private sector lending. Still in East Africa, Uganda's proposed budget for the 2025-2026 financial year has grown 25% to $19.6 billion compared to the previous projection of $441 billion given in September. The Ministry of Finance in Uganda did not provide a reason for the raise in a statement posted on X. The government previously said spending priorities in the financial year starting July would be in agro-industrialization, tourism and minerals, including petroleum. South Africa's Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, will this afternoon brief the media on the technical process to be undertaken regarding the 2025 budget. His Deputy Ministers, David Masondo and Asho Sarapin, as well as Director General Duncan Peters, will attend the briefing in Pretoria. This follows the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters' court challenge against the proposed value-added tax hike in the budget. The court ratified an agreement reached on a few days ago, allowing Godongwana to rescind the increase, which was initially set to take effect tomorrow. South Africa's Small Business Development Minister Stella Ndabeni maintains that the ocean's economy is there to benefit South Africans at large. Ndabeni, who has referred to the ocean's economy as South Africa's next gold mine, says it was important that everyone, including residents of townships, benefit. She stressed the importance of sustainable fishing, tourism, shipping, aquaculture, as well as oil and gas exploration and the preservation of the health of the marine ecosystem.
We have been given fishing rights and we're trying to assist them because most of them, they will complain that they don't have infrastructure. They are forced to go and fish, but they don't have access to market. As a result, they're being exploited. Now we're coming in to step in to say this is the opportunity that must not only be exploited by those who can afford. How do we step in as the department? By ensuring that we provide them with the infrastructure.
Manufacturing activity in China has fallen this month more sharply than economists had predicted. The Purchasing Managers Index dropped from its highest level in a year last month. This as US President Donald Trump's tariffs kicked in along with retaliatory taxes that China has imposed. The BBC's Nick Marsh has the details.
The extent of this drop is down in part to a flurry of exports last month as manufacturers rushed to ship out goods just before the tariffs kicked in. Last week, policymakers in Beijing announced more stimulus measures to try and help domestic consumers spend more and ease the economy off of its reliance on exports to the United States. Neither side so far has made the first move towards negotiations in this trade war, which China's leadership has vowed to fight until the bitter end if necessary.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 601, Botswana 13 pula 537, Kenya 128 shilling 42, and Zambia 27 kwacha 87. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar is trading at 5 reals 64, Russia 82 rubles 9, India 85 rupees 16, China 71.27, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 18 rand 53. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities markets now, gold is trading at $3,311 and platinum at $972 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.25 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Keeping you on the know and on the move.
me right here on The Move. Channel Africa is where you get the African perspective. Really interesting conversation when we speak about women and community. And, it might seem a lot like, my observation of this seem like it doesn't make sense. It's a head in the cloud kind of observation. No, women shouldn't be the pillars of strength, because without them, who else is going to be there? But it's a very intentional thing that I am saying, because community is important, and I realize that. But the more things change, we realize that a sense of community is not really something that we have a lot. Urbanization has changed the way that women have really come together in that sense of community. But I also I don't always have good thoughts about what traditional senses of community for women have been, and essentially what they've been used for. Because I see women hold communities, but still within those communities, as individuals, they remained drained, they remained burnt out, they remained sort of taken to the very last degree, whereas we could be finding systems where women can use community both for helping others, but also to continue feeding into themselves so they can have enough to give. And I'm of the notion that you have to give to yourself first. Preserve yourself first, so you have the right strength, the right amount of joy, the right amount of energy to give and build that community. Therefore, having more to give to community builds the community more. But there's another issue that we have now, where because of urbanization, a lot of people are actually straying away from building community, and then they need community and they think, where can I go? What can I do? I don't have anyone to go to. Mm-hmm. And we are in a very individualistic society now, aren't we?
Well, I think some communities remain communal. That's why I say sometimes we have a privileged view on this one. We might take our privilege, our middle class privilege, for granted, Bali, but it is a privilege, and I think we should acknowledge it. I think some communities cannot function without community. It's like involuntary, because just of the needs within those communities. So women need to work together in certain communities because there's no other way that they can actually survive. They actually need one another, and it's just the natural inclination that they have due to their circumstances. Yes, if you live in Sandton somewhere, or you live in these high-walled communities,
Lagos, somewhere in the suburbs of Lagos.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really need that much of a sisterhood. A sisterhood is then a choice, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to go to hang out with the girls. We're going to go for coffee and have high tea. And yeah, we're going to go with the girls out for church. There's a sisterhood function that's actually happening. So that's a privilege that some women have, but many women on the African continent, I feel, still work together from a communal aspect, involuntary, even when they don't really want to. They have no other choice but to gather other women together and make things work.
Well, that's the TikTok feature for today. I think playing right off this particular conversation, a young lady who actually does really great on TikTok speaks about a lot of societal norms, societal ills, and societal issues. Her name is Amahle, and this is what she has to say about community.
Ghana and Kenya taught me the importance of Ugyovela, and by extension, showing up for your community when it's inconvenient. Because my mom always tried to explain it to me like, Amahle, you're not going to have a community if you only choose to participate in it how lemonade. Because in Ghana and in Kenya, I definitely know Uguti, driving me to Kenyatta Airport at 2 a.m. was inconvenient, but people said, no, it's just an act of kindness. Or taking me to the market when you had a meeting, taking us to the market when you had a meeting, Gai. No, it was just an act of service because you wanted to go to that art precinct. And so my mom always tried to put it into words, but she also found it bizarre that she had to explain what community is to us because it never had to be explained to her. She always says, no one ever explained it to me. Why do I have to explain it to you? Well, darling, it's because you didn't grow up in an individualistic space. The way that the South African suburbs were designed, babes, is not the same way that the culture of the township is. Do you get what I'm saying? And like some weeks ago, she was speaking to me about her first culture shock moving to the suburbs some years ago, where she saw a funeral happening opposite her place, and she was like, oh my gosh, there's a funeral and I don't know about it. Like, she was like shocked. Ukuthi hona le lifu angvelanga aba ask people to come and peel makapitla. The funeral came and it went, and we don't even know who passed away. You know, that was her first experience in the suburbs. So now you know ukuthi Ugyovela is very important, because it also shows that you're immersed in your community.
So I like that sentiment, because it comes from someone whose mother is someone who grew up in the township setting. And as you were saying, Benjamin, in many places where poverty thrives, community
not
is
only
not
where
an
poverty
option,
thrives,
but a lot of the time where poverty thrives,
not
poverty
necessarily,
thrives a lot
because
on
I
the
think when
continent.
we think about the townships, we think about poverty. I don't think it's poverty. I just think in some of these communities that are maybe they have a historical imperative to have that as a cultural norm. Right. It actually happens.
Yeah, so that's why her mother was like, I don't understand why I have to explain society or community to you, because it was never explained to me. It wasn't because it was just a way of life. Community was a way of life in that environment. She then becomes, makes enough money, moves herself and her children, who are then raised in suburbs where it's a very individualistic society. And she relays a story of her mother saying, you know what, there was a funeral right opposite me and I had no idea who had died. Nobody had told me, and it was so outside of the norm of where I was grown and raised. But I love the fact that she says, when you're trying to build a community, and whether or not you come from an expected community or an individual community, if you want to build a community, you have to remember that part of building a community is doing it even when it's inconvenient.
Yeah, and it's kind of not the privileged view, is it? Because we want to do things when they are convenient for us, you know. So it's a very interesting one. I actually agree with that one. I think in many communities we are insulated, especially privileged communities, and we are living in those individualistic silos in many places. But the dominating factor on Africa is that we still have communities. Let's not forget that communities are central in how we build each other. Communities are central to how we thrive. Communities are important in how we form businesses. Communities are important to how we look after our children and our families. So a very important conversation there, buddy.
Well, I love it. Let us know what you think about this conversation on community. And it doesn't only have to be about women. I mean, that's the basis of the conversation in this hour's interview. But community as a whole maybe is something that we all should need to a certain degree. And maybe by the sense of community doesn't mean you have to have a lot of friends and a lot of people taking up your time, because there are people who view this differently. But what does community look like to you? Perhaps you should let us know on our live stream. Comment there on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Join our live stream and let us know what community means to you, because obviously it can look very different for different people.
Hey, thank you, CDM Mapango. See you there on our live stream. If you are listening to us live on our different platforms, let us know where you are joining us from. It's 10:55 Central African Time. You're listening to On the Move right here on Channel Africa.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And I couldn't see, I was cheating on me.
Me, I just want me, my people, they visa. So I give them my heart and my liver.
bringing him down, he still stays on top. This is Burna Boy with one titled Cheat on Me, taking us to 59 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African time. Well, we've moved things a little bit with our stories. We'll let you know what's coming up a little bit later right here on our show. But before we get into the final hour of On the Move and get into our subject matters, let's find out what Jwalane Tulongwepe has for us in the news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Top stories. Sawa, Nigeria appoints a new commander to beef up fight against insurgents, and 14 people killed in a massive fire at a hotel in the eastern Indian state of West Bengal. Good morning. Nigeria has appointed Major General Abdul Salam Abubakar as its new commander for its fight against insurgency in the northeast. This comes after renewed attacks in the last 4 months that has killed several civilians and soldiers in the region. Joeli Hodi has the story.
Major General Abubakar's appointment comes as security experts say a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by Boko Haram and its splinter rival ISWAP has raised fears of a major comeback by jihadists. Their tactics now include armed drones and explosive devices planted on major roads. At least 22 people were killed in weekend raids by militants in Adamawa and Borno states, while 26 others died on Monday after an explosive device ripped into 2 vehicles in Borno. Dozens more have been killed by a string of jihadist attacks since January. In Borno State, Governor Babagana Zulum has warned that insurgents are making gains with little pushback from the military.
Pressure is mounting to probe Kenyan police and army officers involved in quelling last year's protests in the capital. Amnesty International and the Kenya Human Rights Commission have called for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces during demonstrations against a against a rise in taxes last year. Their call follows a BBC investigation exposing members of the security forces who shot dead 3 protesters at Kenya's parliament, igniting public outrage and demands for justice. The wider clampdown by the security forces on a series of protests against the finance bill left at least 65 people dead. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. Operations were halted due to a major advance of Rwandan-backed M23 rebels in Eastern Congo. Sharon Bryce Pease reports.
Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe confirmed to SABC News that they were providing safe passage to Sami DRC and the equipment from their troop-contributing countries, which include South Africa, Malawi and Tanzania. SADC decided to terminate its deployment in Eastern Congo following the deaths of 17 soldiers, bringing their December 2023 deployment to help restore peace in Eastern Congo in support of the DRC government to a rapid end. Sami DRC troops were confined to their bases for months following the Rwandan-backed M23 advance in the region. Reports suggest the Sami DRC convoy will travel to Chato in northwestern Tanzania before repatriation to various countries.
Somalia has banned entry to Taiwan passport holders, citing compliance with the United Nations resolution. The island's foreign ministry is blaming Chinese pressure on Mogadishu at a time Taiwan is boosting ties with Somaliland. Somaliland broke away from Somalia in 1991 but has not gained widespread international recognition for its independence. The region has been mostly peaceful while Somalia has grappled with 3 decades of civil war. Taiwan claimed by China as its own territory and likewise diplomatically isolated, and Somaliland set up representative offices in each other's capitals in 2020 to the anger of both Mogadishu and Beijing. 14 people, including 2 children, have been killed in a massive fire at a hotel in the eastern Indian state of West Bengal. 2 people who were also seriously injured in the fire, which started last night in Rituraj Hotel in Kolkata city. 88 people were staying in the hotel when the fire broke out. The blaze is now under control, but authorities say they're still carrying out rescue operations. The local police chief, Manoj Verma, gave this statement to reporters.
As far as our team has observed during the search operation, there are at least 15 casualties. Several people were rescued from rooms and the roof of the hotel. 5 individuals were rescued from inside the hotel and 20 were brought down from the roof.
Recapping the top story, the SAWA Nigeria has appointed General Abdul Salam Abubakar as its new commander for its fight against insurgency in the northeast. This comes after renewed attacks in the last 4 months that have killed several civilians and soldiers in the region. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
It's 11:06 Central African Time. You are listening to Channel Africa on DSTV Channel 802. You are also able to find us on OpenView 628 on www.channelafrica.co.za. Don't forget that we're also available on the SABC Plus app. Hey, there's so many options, right? You cannot run away from us. You can try avoid us as much as you want. I'm joking. I'm sure you don't avoid us in any way. But look, you are able to find us in many ways. That's the point I'm coming to right now. And we're also on that live stream as well, so do join us. And also become part of the Channel Africa family by actually making sure that you are following us on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1 being the handle on X and TikTok and Instagram, and YouTube. There's so many places where you can become part of the Channel Africa family. Well, I'm on X right now, and someone who was enjoying the banter is Ibrahim on X, so saying what an interesting debate that you guys were having around women and community. You guys should differ more often. Very insightful, hearing different perspectives. Thanks. Look, we can't differ for the sake of differing, right? And we tend not to differ on many things, but sometimes there's more nuances in some of the things that we talk about on the show. So thank you so much, Ibrahim, for listening to that conversation that we had earlier on with our guest Linda Mububa, and we're speaking about community and women. What's your take on women in community? How important is that? But not in a trivial way, but in a way that actually makes a difference and is impactful. You know, sometimes we say, yeah, women must be in that side of the corner. No, they mustn't be where men are. Sometimes we isolate them, and we prefer that, to speak of women in an isolation way, but not in a way that actually fosters our change as society. So let's be progressive in that. Women and community, what's your take on that? +2763 406 9126. And also you can give us your comments as well on our X handle at Channel Africa 1, just like Ibrahim has done so. Well, we're going into this interesting one. I have so many people that I know that do this, and I'm yet to convince them to make me a nice woolen jersey. I've been wanting an authentic grandma jersey that is knitted together, but I haven't been able to convince any one of them. These people always will tell you, I'm still trying to get this confidence to do it, but some people actually turn it into an entrepreneurial endeavor. These are grandma hobbies like knitting, like community gardens, like book clubs. I don't know if book clubs are grandma hobbies. That's debatable.
Yeah, a little bit debatable, but
Yeah.
it could be. I mean, just I love
Maybe
the fact-
high tea is a little bit grandma.
High tea is a little grandma. And that's
Yeah.
so my thing. Give me a little bit of that high tea, please.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at this. It's actually coming back. I've seen a lot of people doing this in my world, like people just starting to knit, people starting like baking. Baking is a big one, right? And then people are also doing this thing where they fermenting things, or what is that thing when you put gherkins in a bottle? Pickling.
Yeah.
Oh, look, you pickle.
This weekend I started gardening officially.
Yeah, but that's not that's more of a
grandma hobby.
That's more of a grandpa hobby.
No ways, gardening is very grandma hobby.
Okay, I've been gardening for a while now, and I don't know if it's a hobby. I think it's a huge task. There's a lot of work when it comes to gardening. So we're going to be speaking about grandma hobbies. Why is Gen Z actually bringing this back, and why are they relating to it in such an interesting way? We're going to be speaking to recent art school graduate Taliwalo, who specializes in felting, crocheting, knitting. It's all interesting. There's an interesting one that some people do. You know, it's so very like you know, we are those la-di-da.
What is that?
Bird watching.
Oh wow!
I saw someone doing bird watching the other day. I'm like, wow, really, Teboho, you do bird watching now.
That is so interesting. But I love it. I love that hobbies are coming back in fashion, and there were things that we used to find to be just for the grandmas and not really interesting.
Yeah.
But now definitely coming back in fashion in a huge way, but also comes back to that conversation we had on community.
Yeah.
Hobbies have created large places to actually find and place yourself in some community.
Yeah, but, you know, I want to also talk about the aesthetic of it. Does it class you as a particular type of person? Because also I know there's a lot of classism in these things, these hobbies, these niche hobbies.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see. Thank you, Howie Jabili. You are on our live stream. Thank you as well to Duncan Matebula for joining us there. Let's take a bit of a breather. We'll be back.
Ritmos e cultura com o embaixador da música africana e lusófona Jacob Wagantimani.
Mombali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala mbona wewe mombali nanga
tem sentido tanto a sua falta e dos ritmos de cultura quando você esteve na querida
Em 2025 e o embaixador da música africana e lusófona Jacob Wagantimani traz todas as entrevistas com os músicos africanos e lusófonos para a melhor dança, entrevistas e entretenimento. Não perca! Todos os domingos, das 20 às 21 horas de Johannesburg, aqui no Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Hey, thanks for listening to us right here on Channel Africa. We're going into our final hour, and this is a cool one that we're looking at, and these are what they call granny hobbies. Apparently they're making a comeback. Something surprising is happening. What's happening in the air? Return to the hobbies we once dismissed as old-fashioned, like knitting, circles, community gardens, bird watchers. Another one is gun collectors as well, like vintage guns.
I don't know anybody's granny who's ever collected guns.
Well, I know a lot of old Dunnies and Opas who collected guns.
Yeah.
That seems to be something that's also an interesting one. Gen Z is baking sourdough bread all of a sudden, and bird watching is a thing, and you know, the knitting of bucket hats is becoming a thing even on TikTok. Why is this happening? What our ancestors trying to relive their old school experiences in our bodies? Is this like an incarnation that is happening of some sort? Or we're just relearning what grandmas always knew. Hobbies aren't just hobbies, they're lifelines a regulated state of mindfulness. To speak on this, we have art school graduate Tali Walo on the line. Hey Tali, thank you for joining us. This is a fun conversation. Welcome on the show.
Hi, Benjamin and Palesa. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's so cool to see these things actually happening. I saw a friend of mine on her Instagram and she had these images of herself in the woods. And I was like, what is she doing? And she had these very expensive binoculars, right, in her hand. And she was looking into the far away. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And I was texting her and I'm like, what's going on here, Debucho? And she's like, it's bird watching, Ben. It's a thing. So what's going on? Why are all these things coming back?
Look, it's interesting because so I'm a fiber artist. I'm a weaver and a felter and a crocheter and a gardener, and all my friends are crafters. And it's definitely coming back in the young community, which I find really interesting. I definitely think COVID played a part. Everyone's stuck at home, feeling really lonely and depressed. And I think, sitting by your fire, sitting, on your couch all cozy and being able to produce something with your own hands is extremely rewarding. And it's a meditation at the end of the day, very repetitive work. It also helps you to see the small things in life, notice the birds, notice the plants, notice, the repetitive actions that we do every day that sometimes we don't think is worth it. But yeah, I think that it's exciting because it's been kind of lacking for a long time. The community, the fiber community and the crafter community has always been very small, but now it's growing, which is super exciting. Yeah.
It's so anti-cultural, right? Because we live in a time where everyone's saying, I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm doing so many things. But there's a group of people who are going against that grain and saying, there's time. There's time to do a little bit of gardening. There's time for me to make a little bit of tea myself and sit and work on the art of making tea. There's people who are saying, you know what, I'm going to be a felter like yourself. What does this actually do for us in a culture that's actually opposed to that slowing down notion?
I mean, I think slowing down, especially in the society we live in where we're taught to be on the go 24/7, and we never take time for ourselves. I think we get caught up in that very easily. And what I love about kind of slow living and sustainable living and learning about the slowness of life, you kind of realize that everything except for human beings work on a slow growth, slow movement, and it could be transformative, and I think especially after, being so stressed, after the work week, being able to sit down and be with yourself, I think is a big thing. And be able to be quiet with other people, I think is something that we don't do often. Yeah, I don't know. I think...
Sure. Sounds interesting. I mean, my one thing is where do you go to learn these skills? Because someone would say there are dying dinosaurs, some of these things that people are actually now going back to. Where are you getting the skill to actually do it? Some of them are very niche in how they're actually done, and maybe you need someone to sit next to you and show them how they are done with a sense of artistry.
It depends on the craft. So what I think is quite sweet, so as a weaver, weaving is something that's been dying, traditional weaving on looms, which has been, a traditional craft for hundreds of years, and we've kind of lost touch of that, in fast fashion. But I think a lot of it is mentorship and learning from the older community, as well as people, things like crocheting and knitting have become very popular, and it's very self-taught based, which is great, because it's super accessible. There's so many, I go onto Pinterest sometimes and you can find a crochet hat, pattern pretty easily. And if you've got if you've got a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, you can learn these things really easily. And I think we underestimate how our, human brains work, and how we can understand these things a lot easier than possible. But also, friend circles, knitting circles. There's a lot of workshops in Johannesburg and Cape Town. I teach felting workshops, and at gallery spaces sometimes they do these things. They have like sip and paints nowadays, so there's a lot of events nowadays that are bringing people together to share skills, which I think is wonderful. But it is hard because at art school they don't teach you these things, and the line between craft and art is still very prominent. So yeah, it is hard to find places to learn these things, but it is becoming more and more common for people to share their skills, which I think is wonderful.
I just Googled felting. I'm like, what is felting? And it looks very difficult. It looks like just a very unique way of making, is it like little toys? What's felting?
So there's two different modes of felting. There's needle felting, which is essentially you have this needle that's a little bit ridged and you have a piece of foam. And through all of these, you're working with raw wool, so sheep's wool that have been sheared off the sheep and washed and brushed, and you get this beautiful, fluffy material that's very loose. And felting is just a mode of knotting, so all crocheting and knitting and weaving is a lot of like knotting and being able to strengthen the wool. Wow. So needle felting is popular to make little animals and very detailed work. And then there's also wet felting, which is what I do a lot of, which allows you to create like 3D objects using soapy water to knot the fiber.
Oh, that's so awesome, man. And I'm sure this is another something that probably was in the backdrop and people were losing that particular skill. I want to know, in terms of that community of people who adopt these so-called grandma hobbies, how important is that community? What do you actually get out of it? But also attaching yourself to another person who might be more skilled than you and trying to improve your skill as well. I know there's a lot of that knowledge building around these particular skills. I know with gardening it's certainly true, with people wanting to know more about plants, how they function, and different plant species. But also, I'm sure even with knitting itself, there are multiple ways to do so and multiple variations of it. And the knowledge building is such an important element to this. And we'll speak a little bit about this. We're speaking to art school graduate Tali Walo about grandma hobbies. Do you have one? Let us know.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio, but sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. On the Move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the Move.
You know, it's funny because just today when I leave work, a friend of mine called and like, you know what, I've been so busy lately. Could you go down the road from where we work here in Melville? Could you go there? There's someone there who sells sorghum products. Could you go there and please fetch my sorghum flour? Because my sourdough sorghum starter is dying. So they have to make their sourdough. So when I leave here, I have to go fetch someone's flour so that they can go get their sourdough bread and the sourdough starter doesn't die, so they can make sourdough bread, which is amazing.
It is amazing.
I've taken on a few new hobbies as well this year, which I'm really loving, and a lot of them just happen so organically. My garden is just starting now. I had a beautiful bouquet of flowers that it was presented to me, and as it was in the vase, it started blooming, and I was like, you know what, actually let me just plant it and see what happens. It's going so very well so far. But there's another hobby that I've gotten a big interest in that's quite just for me to relax, and that's painting. So I'll just go online and buy, a canvas, some water paint, and I paint whatever I like. You've been doing that
for a while now, yeah.
And I've been doing that for a while, and I really enjoy it. Yeah. It's definitely a little bit of a granny hobby that I've taken account to. I'm not the world's greatest painter, but it does help me relax, and I have a little bit of fun when I'm doing it. We're speaking about that, some granny hobbies that it seems like a lot of young people, Gen Zs, millennials, have taken on as a huge part of forming new communities, but also to sort of get a new sense of purpose. We're still having this conversation with Tali Walo, specializing in felting, knitting, and crocheting. She herself is a recent art school graduate who's helping us unpack this grandma hobby phenomenon that's really growing. Like I said, Tali, we are all sort of going into different hobbies, but I think the one thing that we've really realized is that we have enjoyed so much convenience that we have mistaken this convenience for fulfillment, right? We sit at home, we do nothing. Instead of going to the grocery store, which also used to be a hobby for many back in the day, to meet each other in the grocery store, interact with people. Now we can just get the groceries, come to our door, everything that we want comes to our door, and literally we do nothing except sit there and enjoy the convenience of speaking to people on social media and receiving the things that we want to our door. And now we're lonely, and then comes the reawakening of these granny hobbies.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting considering, how small the community still is. But I mean, the fact that it's growing, I mean, like, my favorite thing to do with my friends is to invite a couple of people over, and we have something called a parallel play, where everyone brings their craft or whatever they're working on creatively, whether it be crocheting, painting, drawing, doodling. I mean, I've got some friends who are graphic designers who still, spend so much time in front of their screens every day and just enjoy coming in together with some friends and doodling on some paper, which, I find the connection to material is really, really important. It does slow you down. It makes you less anxious in social situations, which I experience. Social anxiety is a lot more prevalent nowadays, especially after COVID. So it's very helpful in that way.
Another thing, Tali, another thing is that we see work as a huge part of our lives. A lot of people are at work the majority of the time, and not everyone, in fact, very few people do creative things at work. So you're in there, you're stressed, you think about work a lot of the time. Let's speak about that importance of having a creative outlet, because you can have outlets in various ways, and usually we see young people as the outlet of going out, having drinks, hang out with friends, but now we're using creativity as an important outlet in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge mode of expression, which I think a lot of people don't get the opportunity to access in daily work and life. I mean, thankfully, I'm making my art my work in my life, so I get that creative outlet often. But a lot of people who come to my workshops, my mom has a ceramics studio on Jan Smuts at Kim Sachs Gallery, and she teaches people who are doctors who have like really heavy, hectic jobs, and just need some time to sit and slow down. And the amount of people who make the most beautiful things and can apply knowledges like mathematics, and it's really, crochet is, mathematics at the end of the day. You have to do a lot of math to figure out how to get to a certain from A to B, and how many stitches you need. So it's really accessible to everybody. And I think people underestimate how much we need that little bit of wriggle room outside of, us being told what we need to do all the time, on a silver platter, kind of like, this is what you do at work, and being able to sit and just express and not have that you have the freedom to do whatever you want to do, and it's super accessible to anyone, a beginner or an intermediate crafter. You can make anything you want to.
I mean, when you speak about the mathematics of these things, it's interesting because it seems like there is that knowledge building around it, and that element can't be undermined.
Yeah, when it comes to gardening, you have to understand soil composition, and you need to make sure that you're fertilizing. Otherwise, you need to know what's wrong with the plant. So there's a lot of interesting knowledge there. When it comes to weaving, you have to understand, different kinds of materials and how they hold themselves and what they're good for. Like, for example, mohair, which is just a different type of wool, cannot be felted, right? But it can be spun, So there's like a lot of different nuances where you do have to kind of educate yourself. But I find the information a lot more interesting. It kind of makes a combination of, chemistry and mathematics and patterns, but, adds that into like a beautiful creative thing, which I think we underestimate is the way nature works. There's always a balance of maths and creativity within the world,
Well, Tali, we need to wrap it up, but if someone is out there and they're like, well, I don't have a hobby yet and I think I have space and time to do something, how do you choose the right hobby for you?
Oh wow, that's a tough one. When talking to someone like me, I've tried them all until I found the one thing. I think it depends if you like wearing crocheted clothing. If you have like a practical thing that you would like to make yourself, that's a great place to start. There's so many online tutorials, knitting beanies and socks even. Well, that's a bit difficult, but there's a lot of things out there, and I think just get inspired. Talk to some people, find out what sounds cool to you, and that will inspire you to make something really beautiful.
And I'm sure trying some different things out, and eventually you'll land on something that you might really like. Well, you say this is also part of your work. Where can we go and find your own work?
So on Instagram, I'm at found.fiber, and I have a studio where I teach workshops, felting, weaving, crocheting. There aren't many places in existence, but I'm actually starting a fiber school this year where I'm going to be teaching kind of those kinds of fiber slow crafts, or just creating an alternative learning space where people can come and, craft and just be part of the community, also based on like found material, which is something that I'm very passionate about. So there isn't much of it happening, but, we're growing, we're getting there. So definitely come check us out. Otherwise, the Kim Sachs Gallery, we pride ourselves on handmade work and craft, and having those kinds of conversations is definitely open in that regard. So come and visit us there,
Well, thank you so much, Tali. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and I think quite fun to sort of experiment with all these different hobbies. Thank you so much for your time. That's Tali Walo, recent art school graduate, but also someone who does felting, knitting and crocheting, speaking about the new rise of grandma hobbies for good well-being and, of course, a nice creative outlet. It's 11:31 Central Africa time. Figile Lungwati is back with our latest sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
We start off with athletics. Africa's sprint king Ferdinand Omanyala is fired up for another crack at glory as he lines up in star-studded field in the Shanghai Diamond League this weekend. Omanyala hopes to go one better after finishing second to an informed South African Akani Simbine at the Xiamen opening leg of the series. Omanyala clocked 10.13 seconds behind Simbine's 9.99 seconds, while Britain's Jeremiah Azu settled for third in 10.17 seconds. Botswana's Olympic 200-meter champion Litsile Debogo surprisingly faded to seventh, crossing the line in 10.20 seconds. The Shanghai stage will not be an easier with Simbine, Jamaica's Olympic silver medalist Kishani Thompson, Debogo, and three-time world champion Christian Coleman of the USA in the mix. Omanyala is winless against Simbine in their two meetings so far. Football news. Inter Milan coach Simone Inzaghi says recent poor form does not erase the progress they have made over the last 4 years ahead of their Champions League semi-final first leg against Barcelona today. Inter dropped to second in Serie A last weekend following consecutive losses to Bologna and AS Roma, either side of their defeat by rivals AC Milan in the second leg of the Coppa Italia semi-final that ended their treble hopes. For Inter, who will compete in the Club World Cup after the season ends, the tie against Barcelona provides an opportunity to forget last week's woes. Striker Marcus Thuram, Inter's top scorer in Serie A with 14 goals, has returned from injury for the Italian champions, although the manager did not confirm whether the Frenchman would play. South African Sports Confederation Olympic and Paralympic Committee SASCOC President Barry Hendricks highly compliments his organization's sports business model. Hendricks unpacks SASCOC's model and confidently recommends it other African countries as well.
So there are various aspects to providing a stable organization. One is you ensure that your policies are in place and you only operate within your policies. This can be finance policies, HR policies, travel policies, and a whole host of others. But then also tied to those policies, you have each different unit of the business, such as the administration or operations of the organization. You have programs of the operations, and then you also have this oversight and strategic oversight from what you call the executive of the board. You have to separate the areas of responsibility from the board, which is oversight and strategy, from that of the CEO and the staff, which is operations and implementation.
And finally, hockey news. Namibia's junior women's and men's hockey teams have successfully qualified for the upcoming Junior World Cup set to take place in Chile and India respectively. Their qualification follows a strong showing at the Junior Africa Cup held in Windhoek, where they competed against top continental teams. In the women's competition, South Africa proved dominant, winning all 5 of their matches to top the standings with 15 points. Namibia finished in second place after securing 4 victories, giving them a total of 12 points. Zimbabwe claimed third place after a decisive win over Uganda, with all 3 teams earning a spot at the Junior Women's World Cup in Chile. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thanks, Figzozo, for that update. That's File Lingwati wrapping up our morning sports. To wrap up our morning business, we've got Tabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Benjamin, and good morning. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed business leader Dr. Alistair Reuters as Special Advisor for Investment Promotion. Dr. Reuters is a former Trade and Industry Department's Director General. His appointment comes as government implements a broad range of economic reforms aimed at making South Africa more attractive for investors. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwinya.
Dr. Reuters will advise President Ramaphosa on South Africa's continuing investment drive, which is a principal component of the 7th administration's focus on inclusive economic growth and job creation.
Electrical experts have cautioned South Africans to get surge protection devices to avoid complicating their insurance claims. This follows uncertainty on the stability of the grid coupled with the possibility of lightning. Engineer Dr. Andrew Dixon says insurers are increasingly requiring that property owners get surge protection devices.
You want to be looking at point-of-use surge protection or in the distribution board. So the distribution board gives you some global protection, and the point-of-use protects specific equipment. So very much your sensitive things like TVs, fridges, sound systems.
South Africa's Electricity Minister, Hussein Suramokgopa, will be one of the main speakers at the second G20 Energy Transitions Working Group meeting in Cape Town over the next 3 days. The aim of the meeting is to bring together industry role players from across the world. They will collaborate on advancing sustainable energy transitions, fostering essential cooperation and knowledge sharing. Zelene Merrington reports.
Key focus areas of recent G20 presidencies include just energy transitions by Indonesia in 2022, green innovation and South-South cooperation in 2023 by India. During its presidency, South Africa's priorities will include energy security and affordable, reliable access, and just, affordable and inclusive energy transitions.
Kenya's inflation rate in April rose to 4.1% year-on-year, up from 3.6 a month before. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says on a monthly basis, inflation was at 0.3% in April. Kenya's inflation rate has risen steadily since a low of 2.7% in October, but remains well within the central bank's 2.5 to 7.5 target range. Earlier this month, the Kenya Central Bank cut its policy interest rate for the fifth meeting in a row to 10.0%, a surprise move aimed at further stimulating private sector lending. Manufacturing activity in China has fallen this month more sharply than economists had predicted. The Purchasing Managers Index dropped from its highest level in a year last month. This as U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs kicked in along with retaliatory taxes that China has imposed. The BBC's Nick Marsh has the details.
The extent of this drop is down in part to a flurry of exports last month as manufacturers rushed to ship out goods just before the tariffs kicked in. Last week, policymakers in Beijing announced more stimulus measures to try and help domestic consumers spend more and ease the economy off of its reliance on exports to the United States. Neither side so far made the first move towards negotiations in this trade war, which China's leadership has vowed to fight until the bitter end if necessary.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 601, Botswana 13 pula 537, Kenya 128 shilling 42, and Zambia 27 kwacha 87. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar is trading at 5 real 64, Russia 82 rubles 9, India 85 rupees 16, China 7 yuan 27, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 53. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Gold $3,311, platinum at $972 per ounce, Brent crude oil is at $64.25 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
5 Central African time. We're about to get out of here. Remember, at midday Central African time, Lulu Gabu comes in and she makes sure that you get updated on what's happening here on the African continent. Hey, hobbies. Buddy's doing so many different hobbies. I'm still gonna catch up, but I don't know. It's not my thing. I do gardening.
Ben, you have a lot of hobbies.
Like what?
I literally only have 2 hobbies. Ben, you do the guitar.
Yeah.
You read books.
Yeah,
you like art.
Books are not a hobby. I happen to be a
book
journalist,
reading,
so it's like
but
part of work.
book reading for leisure is a hobby, and you do like reading for leisure.
Okay.
I mean, you always bring us your books here on the Vintage
I do.
Africa.
Yes.
So you like art, you like music. That is also a hobby of yours.
Music is not a hobby.
No, it is. It is.
Like
you like vinyls. It's very specialized, right?
vinyls.
You collect vinyls.
Okay.
You collect art. You play the guitar. You are very much a grandpa. Nobody is more grandpa than Benjamin. Okay, nobody is more grandpa than Benjamin. Benjamin is at the peak. Has always been the peak of grandpa hobbies. So you don't come here and say I don't have any hobbies. If I get counting the hobbies that you have, so you play the guitar, you collect art, you collect vinyls, you like to go to jazz music things. That's also a hobby, right? And you like to go to arty things.
Yeah.
That's also a hobby.
Okay.
So that's just 5, and we just got started.
You know what, Baline? If something is in you, that's who you are. It's not a hobby.
You were born a grandpa. Ben was born a grandpa.
No, I promise you, it's not even that. I promise you, it's like if something is, I don't know if I really see these things as hobbies because they just part of my life.
Number 6, for leisure, that is a hobby.
Yeah, but I mean, those things are just part of who you are. It's like if you've done something all your life, is it a hobby?
It is a hobby.
I don't know if reading is a hobby.
Reading is a hobby. If you read for leisure and it's not reading for work, that is a hobby. Reading for leisure is a hobby.
Look, if I don't read, right, my vocabulary is going to get stunted. And I happen to be on air. So imagine, have you heard those radio presenters who don't
Which
read?
ones? Which ones, Benji? Which ones?
I won't mention names. There's a whole lot of, there's a host of them. There's a swarm of them.
Hey, well, that,
no, but I think some things. No, my point is not to diss anyone.
Yeah, of course.
But my point is, when you do something as part of who you are and part of your work, I don't feel it's a hobby.
No, it is a hobby. Ben, you have a lot of hobbies, okay? Ben has a lot of
I'll
hobbies.
take it. I've got hobbies.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
well, let's call them hobbies.
Yes. Not for now.
I don't know,
hobbies.
but also there's like another debate. Like, how do you differentiate something from being like a lifestyle to just being a hobby? Because
things that are part of your lifestyle that aren't necessities are hobbies, right?
Okay.
So it's not like you have to collect art.
No.
That's a hobby. It's not like you have to play the guitar. That's a hobby. You don't even have to read books for leisure.
Yeah.
That is a hobby. So I find that would be the definition of a hobby. Anything that you're doing as part of your lifestyle that's not a necessary part of your life, but something you do either for relaxation, for knowledge building, for creativity, or anything else outside of the need sector is a hobby.
Well, you know what? When I started my journalism work many years ago in a newsroom, I met a guy by the name of Bongani Matondo. He's a very fantastic journalist. And what he did, right? And I used to read before that, right? I would arrive at my desk at the Sunday Times and I would get in there and find a book on my desk. I'm like, who
What's
put
this?
this book
What's going
there?
on here?
And then the books just stacked, right? And then I was like, no, man, these books are not missing. Someone is trying to send a message to me. And then I started taking those books home without knowing who put those books there. So they were very cool books that actually changed my consciousness and who I am. And then I started reading all these different books over time. And then he came to me and Bongani said, hey, look, if you don't read, you'll never become the person you want to be. And then it was like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, reading is not a hobby. He told me, it's like, it's not a hobby. Right now, you do it as a hobby, but it's not who you are yet. So I'm trying to instill that your reading is who you are, and it should be based on a personal kind of, what do you call it? Personal vibe.
Okay.
Let me call it personal. It should become a personal vibe.
Right.
You know, when you're vibing, when people like, this guy is vibing, but you vibe with books.
Yeah. And that's on just one of your 6 or 7 hobbies.
And I'm trying to get away from this hobby
I know you're trying to explain to me, but that's literally just one of the 6 things that I just mentioned as part of your hobbies.
Okay, reading is a hobby.
11:50 Central Africa time. What hobbies are you taking up? Mine are now gardening and painting. Just arts and craft is something that I like to do in my free time. So those are my 2 hobbies right now. What hobbies are you taking up? And also, if you don't have any hobbies yet, I know there's so many ways to actually. In fact, I found out this week on TikTok that there is a hobby expo happening here in South Africa, and I'm sure. So you can go there, and there's various stalls with different hobbies that you can go and try out. And so you go there, you learn about hobbies that you probably even don't know about yet. You try them out a little bit, and then you find your vibe. So if you can find something like that in your area, even if you go to a market, there's a place where hobbies also lie, because if you go to random markets, people sell things that they make with their hands, and you can also ask them, wait, this is interesting, how do you make this, how do you do this? And then you get yourself acquainted with different things you can do.
That's pretty cool. I like that idea of a hobby market. That would bring different characters and different personalities, won't it? All right, swap chairs, ladies. Swap chairs there. Lulu Gabu is here.
We will.
Let's take a bit of a break, and then we'll come back and find out what we're expecting from the Africa update. Let's take just a bit of a breather. Let Lulu sit down, and then we'll let you know what's happening in her show.
Zilipendo na I am Henry Shakif.
Acha mambo vipi? Mwaka 2025 mpaka hivi sasa ukoje kwa upande wako mzee baba?
Kabisa, kwa sababu tumejiandaa vizuri. Kama mwaka jana tumefunga vizuri na Septemba, mwaka huu tumefungua vizuri na
hatari sana. Mzee umejipanga, utaki kutupumzisha?
Maana mwanzo alikuwa analalamika sana, spend long time without releasing songs of the blast. Now I need to
back to back. Platform, mambo vipi?
Mambo poa kabisa, wanasemaje ukwese?
Yani huku kuna shangwe, yani la kufa mtu, sikwambie mtu babu.
Hii ni mara yangu ya kwanza pia kusikika kwa pande hizo za South Africa.
Karibu sana, unajisikiaje?
Na furaha kubwa sana kwa sababu mara yangu ya kwanza, na I hope watu watakuwa wananisikiliza watu wengi pia. Ili uweze kuvuka nje, watu waweze kufahamu, tuseme West hivi na nchi tofauti, ni lazima pia uanze kufanya vizuri hapa nyumbani, then uvuke East Africa, after East Africa.
Zilipendwa hapa kwenye Channel Africa, taswira ya Afrika.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
All right, we're wrapping things up, and Lulu Gabu is with us to let us know what we can expect on the Africa update. Fantastic show, very quick. It gives you the latest news on what's happening on the African continent. Hey, Lulu, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, Ben?
I'm good, man.
Good. Happy Hump Day, hey?
Ish.
Yeah.
But the thing about this week, these last few weeks,
I know,
like everyone
holidays.
is on holiday.
I know.
Except us.
Yeah, no, of course. Somebody's got to do it, right?
Someone's got to do it.
All right, so coming up today, we're going to be speaking to Amnesty International's Kenya Executive Director, that's Harton Irungu, with Amnesty International in Kenya calling for an investigation into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces. This is during demonstrations last year. Okay. This story is still top of mind, literally, because a lot of people lost their lives, and they want to find out exactly what happened, and there's to unpack exactly why this is kind of being pushed to the sides and not being focused on. I mean, loss of life is loss of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also we are going to be going to speak to Save the Children South Africa. Megan Breed, Director of Programs for Save the Children. International Day of End Corporal Punishment of Children.
What do you feel about that
today?
I'm not quite sure, because like I have
we went through it and we turned out okay.
That's the thing.
So it's for me, it's a bit. With children will push
the boundaries.
Yeah,
and they do that all the time.
For them to understand that you can't go even further than where you are.
Yeah.
A no is a no,
yeah.
or don't do that, and they do it how do we deal with that? You know, so it's a very tricky one. I always say, and you know, we know parents will say, my house, my rules. So something we'll unpack with Megan and just find out exactly how this is you know, filtering through, especially at schools, because this is where the challenge really was in terms of corporal punishment in schools. I remember we used to get wrapped over the knuckles with that ruler. The wooden ruler.
Teacher who used to hit us with a
it was that horrible wooden ruler. I never forget that.
No, when you had it easy. There was a teacher, a history teacher of ours, who used to hit us with a bat on the knuckles. You know, remember those small bats?
Yeah.
But those were painful because they were wooden bats.
No, and then there's also, you know, we always talk about it. You know, family, when there's family gatherings and then you have the older cousins.
Yes.
And you know, my late grandmother, may her soul rest in peace. We would know that there was a mulberry tree not far from where we lived, and we'd go there wearing white clothes.
Oh no!
And we'd be sitting in the trees and coming back home. It would be one by one. There would be sail on board, all on deck, and from the first person who walks through that door, all of us would be getting
with purple dresses.
Yes, with purple dresses, shorts, everything. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. All of that and more coming up on Africa Update.
I think, you know, in schools it works, right? Because you know, you don't know how the control is, but also in the personal homes it does work. But then I think the alternatives still need to be elaborated on, because I don't think we know how to discipline these little ones.
You know, for back chatting a teacher to a teacher, that for me just doesn't make sense. So in a way we've kind of lost a way of dealing with children, because some children, there's talking to them and then there's talking and it doesn't work. We've seen how many teachers are attacked in classes these days.
In South Africa,
in South Africa more especially. It's very worrying. So there's a lot that's happening. There's a lot of attacks, whether it's students on students. So I think also it goes back to our kids having a lot of freedom.
What do you think about that? Lulu is going to be talking about that. Stay engaged with her show as well. Remember, you can stay in touch with her on +27 63406 9126. Thank you so much, Lulu. We're looking forward to that one. Well, we're going to be saying goodbye until next time. God bless.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Tell me when to say love me, Ginger. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go.